You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Bree and Thais, episode 36.
Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Bree Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
A movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this. Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. This is Bree Seeley.
And Thais Sky.
We are...
It's Monday morning, first off.
It is Monday morning.
Happy fucking Monday.
Yeah.
If this is not the most favorite time of your entire week, you're not doing something right. Because Monday morning is the best time. Because we're here. And
Fact.
we love you. So
Fact.
take that fucking love. Take it in. We're excited to be here with you all today. We have an epic guest. Vicki Saunders is the CEO of SheEO. Say that 10 times fast.
Oh, that was good.
Oh, yeah. She's a superbly intelligent, brilliant, badass fucking woman.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really excited to bring her on a little bit later to talk about SheEO, to talk about this new paradigm of money. You know, we've been talking a lot about money lately because it's time for us women to feel more sexy, more empowered around money. We need to really be thinking about the power that we put into our money. Because this is, we're growing in our capacity to spend money. More and more women are having more and more money, more access to money. So,
we have the capacity to hold more money energetically. Just like we're all opening up to this idea of having abundance and, out earning men. And we have an opportunity to step into leadership within our money and within our wallets. And we're going to talk about that.
Well, something that Bree is very passionate about is that the president is not the top level of the country.
Yes.
That there's 7 layers above the president, and I won't open that Pandora's box because she can go on and on and on about it. But one thing is true. People with money hold tremendous power in our country. They are our lobbyists that affect policy. They are basically, the system is created around people who have money. Because of the power, the laws in our country, you can fund a lot of things by having money. And
our entire government is manipulated by people with money.
Yeah. So obviously, the more us women enter that conversation, have more money, the more policies we get to affect, the more we get to change the system. But I know that money is a very taboo topic. I mean, we really don't talk about it unless it's, I made 6 figures last year. Oh, I'm so excited. But we don't actually talk about the real shit. The debt, the uncomfortable conversations around money, hiring people, losing people, making bad decisions. We don't talk about that shit. And so we are now. Yep. Bree and I are here to continue to talk about money, to talk about debt, to talk about investing, to talk about the power that we have around money, because we truly believe that money is a tool that is available to us women. We just have to take the bull by the horns.
Yeah, we as women are not using the power that we have in our wallets to affect change.
Mm-hmm.
So we can all sit around and complain about, the president that's in office right now.
I mean, I do that.
Which, by all means, do that. And where are you spending your money? Because the way and the places in which you spend your money trickles directly down to our government. So you can find research and follow the money online. The power immediately above the government in our structure is corporatocracy.
Oh, wow.
I'm not even going to try.
Corporatocracy.
So that's the big corporations like Monsanto.
Oh, yeah. And Walmart and all of these huge multi-billion organizations, all these banks.
Exxon, GE. So the banks are actually a level above the corporate.
That's so,
and these are just our banks. And then the level above that is the international banks. And
wow.
So little things like I just learned this morning, did you know that one of the funding banks for the Dakota Access Pipeline is the Mitsubishi Financial Group? Do you know what the Mitsubishi Financial Group owns?
Mitsubishi cars.
Mitsubishi Motors.
Yep.
So literally, and this is no shame because most people haven't done this research, but by purchasing a Mitsubishi motor, you are inadvertently supporting the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into some power that you do have around money and some more ways that you can be conscientious of how you're spending your money. Now, I do have to add a caveat here. We both understand that there's some of us that are listening that literally do not have the power to control where you buy your food, where you buy your basic essentials because you don't have that much money and you need to go to the places that are cheaper to afford buying fruits and vegetables for your family. So we do.
And with that being said, I would also encourage people to do research because there are new alternatives coming
Yes.
out. There is a great alternative to Whole Foods that doesn't cost your whole paycheck. It's called Aldi. They are committed to no genetically modified foods. They are committed to all organic, and their prices are unbelievable. So they are popping up all over the country. You can go on their website. It's ALDI, but just do your research.
Yeah, so that's the caveat. We understand that there are some limitations. We understand that there's some of us that don't have as much power as others. We totally get that. And you are not powerless. There
Yes.
are some options. And you get to decide what that looks like for you. This is something that I've been really sitting with. What are you willing to do about it? Like now that you'll know this, what are you willing to do about it? Maybe you're only willing to do one thing about it. Maybe that means for you not buying Starbucks, buying something else or whatever. Like maybe that's as far as you're willing to go. This is all that we're doing here. We're introducing a new concept, a new thing, and then you get to decide how much you can do, how much you want to do, and then you get to let go of the rest because we're stepping into being more conscientious human beings, but that doesn't mean that we have to expect perfection ourselves and then experience a lot of judgment and self-blame when we don't live to these idealistic perfect perceptions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the ways that, anyone of any financial level can be more empowered around their money is kind of like I mentioned earlier with banking.
Mm-hmm.
So another company that has actually the only companies that have funded the Dakota Access Pipeline are all banks.
Wow.
All banks. All the
That's-
money that is funding that pipeline has come from banks.
And we
One
know
of-
that you have the power of what bank you use. I know it may
Yeah.
be a little less convenient than to go to the ATM down the street, but fuck Bank of America.
And Wells Fargo is
Yeah.
actually a big one. I don't actually know if Bank of America is on the list, but Wells Fargo for sure is on the list.
Well, the reason why I
So-
said fuck Bank of America is because I took all of my money out of all of the banks
Yep.
that were a part of the 2007 bubble.
Yeah, that as well.
Because us taxpayers paid out these fucking banks who now are using the same, they're still doing the same shit. There was no regulation change since the 2007 kind of recession and big bubble burst. There's nothing that's been done about it because why? Because money runs our country. Money runs our government. And so the government's not going to make any policies that's going to stop the flow of money going into their pockets.
So,
So fuck Bank of America.
Well, yeah, I mean, any of those banks that were involved in that, obviously, like right now, Wells Fargo is a big one. I know that's been coming up on everyone's radar. My, mom just pulled all of her money that she had in Wells Fargo.
Yeah.
So, one thing that Tice and I have both done, like I've been with a credit union for probably over 10 years.
We love credit unions.
And they're local, like they're
They
smaller.
support the local economy.
But yeah, your money is going to a better place.
Their interest rates are better.
Yeah.
They actually have better policies. They're more friendly towards
Yeah,
people.
I think their customer service is way better.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that is one thing that anyone of any monetary level can engage in right now. Like
Yep.
going home and maybe switching your money over is you taking action towards changing the things that are going on in our world. And to me, taking your money out of those banks honestly means more than who you voted for in an election that happens once every 4 years.
Yeah, because voting is one thing. Spending your dollar every single day is a whole new level of thing. And we can get very unconscious about where we spend our money. One thing that I don't know if I told you, Brie, but one thing that I'm really working on being more conscientious around is buying things more from Etsy than from a larger brand.
This was going to be my second point.
Oh, look at me. I read your mind.
Well, it's better to buy things from smaller companies.
Because I know that when someone buys a coaching package from me, It goes directly into my livelihood. It goes directly into supporting me, supporting my family, supporting the thing that I love to do.
Well, and then supporting other people. Like for
Exactly.
me, I hired a personal chef, I've hired a
Yes.
housekeeper. So it goes into supporting other people's
And
lives
the local economy.
and the local economy.
So
Yeah.
Etsy is everyone on Etsy. That I mean, predominantly they're small organic businesses who every purchase you make, they're doing a little happy dance at their house. Like, oh my god, I get to sell my T-shirt. They love this stuff, and if I get to contribute to their happiness instead of buying from a larger brand like Old Navy or H&M or whatever else,
Which are also unethical because of labor standards, but that's a
and
whole different conversation.
exactly. So do you know what I'm saying? It just makes a difference in my heart. It creates an energy exchange that actually feels good in my community, in my heart, and in that person's community. So I've been trying to do more of that, just being really conscientious of what am I buying? Do I really have to buy it from this company? Is there someone else that's doing it better, that's doing it more organic, more local, something that I can feed the economy in a positive way?
Yeah, I come from small town,
Yeah,
like business America. My parents owned a candy store, and it was like, people could either come support us and our family, which of course then got rolled right back into the local economy, or they could go run out to Target and get a bag of Ghirardelli.
right.
And like, it's just, it creates more impact
Yeah,
in the
and
world.
we get it's a little bit more time consuming. It's a little bit more not archaic. What's the word I'm trying to say? Just, it requires more time, and we get that. But it's also so worth it.
Yeah.
Ever since I moved to the United States, I've been raised by my stepdad, and he was always for the mom and pop stores, and I always thought that was so weird. Like, why are you into the mom and pop stores? He prefers the mom and pop restaurants than to TGIF. And I always thought that was so weird because TGIF has really good food.
Oh
At
my
least when
God,
I was 7 years old.
Did you ever have their dessert? We used to go get their dessert in college. It was 2 Oreo cookies with ice cream in the middle,
Fuck yeah.
covered in
Hello.
like the chocolate.
The
and
Pazookies from what is it? Blowjobs? BJ's. That's how I remember. The Pazookies are so good. But what I've learned as I've gotten older and wiser is that the mom and pop stores are more likely to create and make their food versus getting it from like a refrigerator and deep like frozen food. They're more likely to be, they feed the local economy in a greater way, and the food tends to be so much better. And so now I totally honor and respect that. And I tend to go to restaurants and places that are more local, that are more organic, that are more, you know, to the roots of this country.
So there is a lot going around right now. There's a movement on Facebook called Grab Your Wallet, and
Is it hashtag grab your wallet?
it is just to
It's if a movement doesn't have a hashtag,
Right?
is it really a movement?
no, that's why we got a hashtag.
Hashtag be amplified.
So they are this big movement, really identifying what brands support Trump and all of the policies that are going down to, disempower women and
Okay, I have
kill
to say,
our
Brie,
country and like
we
all
live
the
in a
things.
really cool time because we get to hold these big companies accountable. In the
Yeah.
past, you never knew what companies were involved in what, but now you get to just do your research and find out, oh my gosh, J.C. Penney actually funds all this stuff, and I don't want to support all that stuff, so I get to withhold my money from that organization.
Which is how, so Grab Your Wallet had a huge movement, and they actually ended up getting Ivanka Trump's line pulled from Nordstrom's.
Oh, wow. So they're responsible for that.
I don't know if they're fully responsible, but the
Poor
woman that created
Nordstrom's.
it
They got
has,
such bad pushback for that.
it is what it is. You get to, put your money where your mouth is. Like,
Totally.
and this is the brilliant opportunity that we all now have.
Yeah.
Is to, like we've been saying, vote with our dollars.
Yeah.
Where are you putting your money? Are you putting your money into companies that are, Uber has a ridiculous rape culture. Like, are you putting your money into that organization?
I deleted Uber and Uber Eats app from my phone yesterday because I mean, I've been using Lyft a lot more anyway, but yeah, I've been reading more and more about what Uber is doing for their women, and it's nothing. And that's not something I value. When Brie and I choose restaurants for our Amplify dinner parties that we host every month, we look at women-owned restaurants because we go out of our way to support other women. So if for you, racism is a value that you hold, or being anti-racist, I guess is the value, and you really want to support marginalized voices, people of color, then maybe you can start to do some research. What companies are owned by, black men and women? What organizations are run by, Muslims? Like, do that research and then
Mhm.
put your money there. Bree and I went out to lunch the other day with our dear friends, and we purposely chose a restaurant that was owned by people of color because we wanted to support them. This stuff makes a difference. It shows solidarity. It says you are important to me and I'm going to put my money there, and this organization does things that are not important to me, so I'm not going to put my money there.
Yeah. I deleted Uber probably 6 or 8 months ago after I found out how many rape and sexual abuse allegations they have
Yeah.
on file. They have documented tens of thousands of each, not
Wow.
just of it together, tens of thousands of rape accusations and tens of thousands of sexual abuse accusations,
Sexual assault.
sexual assault, and they don't want to take any responsibility for it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, their answer is that their drivers are contractors, so the company's not liable. And that if you want to do anything about it, you have to take it up with the driver, but you can't know who the driver is because it's all confidential and da da
Wow.
da 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 da. Da. So yeah, look at what are the morals of the companies that you are supporting. Target is actually a good corporation.
Yeah.
They do
Good, because
great
I love their
things.
shit.
I know, right? Every time I'm there now, actually, I do like a little like go me shopping at Target. Like they funnel money directly back into the education system in each and every community that they're in. They support LGBTQIA
plus.
rights. Like they're actually a good company. There are some not so good companies out there. So look it up. Do your research. We literally have so much fucking power in our
Yes.
hands every single day, and we choose to remain unconscious about it because it's easier.
So I want to add a little perspective here.
Okay.
It's important. So I was listening to a podcast. Don't remember the podcast. Don't remember who the people were. I apologize. I would love to give you credit, but I literally don't remember. And the guy was talking about veganism, and he was saying how eating animals is a form of violence. And he was like, not in the traditional way that we view eating animals as a form of violence. Obviously, eating animal is an inherent form of violence. You're killing the animal. You're putting that energy into your body. That is a form of violence. But he was also saying like any form of watching TV that's violent, listening to violent news, like listening to things that are violent are actually you in like putting violence into your body. And then he goes, but we've become so numbed to it after so much exposure to it that we don't actually recognize how we're performing violence on our bodies every single day. But our body knows. And so our body is consuming all these violent forms of behavior, and it is inevitable that then we create disease in the body, that we create stiffness in the body, right? That we feel unaligned with our body. And so
we talked about this a little bit in our secret episode that came out in
Yes.
November about like watching the Kardashians.
yes.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, so all of these ways that we get unconscious, that we're not considering and thinking about how we are consuming things, is actually a form of violence against ourselves. And that's why when you go, let's say, to a retreat, or you disconnect for a day, or you go into you take a hike in the morning and you feel so refreshed and you almost feel a little sensitive. And then the minute a car whizzes by or the minute your phone rings, it feels like this violent form of behavior against your body. And it's because we've become so desensitized to it that when we take even the littlest of breaks and we come back, we really see how much we are affected by marketing, by all the noise that's going on in the world. And so, one, if you can find opportunities for you to disconnect, that's amazing. But two, it's really important to know that even though you may be unconscious to it, your body is handling all of that abuse. And so, how are you contributing to the violence? And that's, we're not saying to be vegans, we're not vegans ourselves, but can you be more conscientious about what type of meat you eat? Is it organic? I actually was vegan, was vegetarian, couldn't handle it because of my body. Like my body hated me for 2 years because it was just, I wasn't consuming, it's not protein, people. It's not what my body was missing. It was actually animal protein. Um, but I decided, you know what, since I have to eat meat because of my body, then I might as well eat organic meat and help the organic meat industry grow because of the demand. And so now it's like I'm very conscientious about consuming meat that's going to feed the organic industry, that's then going to allow that industry to grow so that more and more people have access to more and more organic meat.
And to take this out a little bit further, that consumption, like, yes, food is a physical consumption, but your consumption of fashion magazines, your consumption of clothing, your consumption of, I mean, you can take this to every level.
Yeah.
What are you consuming? What is the energy behind that consumption? Even like we said, down to banks,
Yeah.
like where you're holding your money, all of that stuff. Like the energy that goes into it impacts you, whether or not you know it.
Well,
So, an ethical standpoint is to say, I don't believe in their causes. I am not going to fund them. And then on an energetic level, it's, I am not going to allow myself to consume things from companies and organizations that don't align with who I am and what I want to create in the world.
well, there was this whole scandal with Under Armour and them, the CEO of Under Armour supporting Trump. And so a bunch of their big ambassadors, like Misty Copeland, who's a very famous ballerina, she, amongst many others, shared on Facebook that they love the people who work at Under Armour. They love the people. But can they represent a brand who's representing something that they don't represent? And so we understand that this is a nuanced conversation. We understand that you may fully respect and have friends and love the people that are in industries that may be creating violence in the world. But you really have to decide, is it worth it for you to consume something or buy something that is ultimately creating a really negative impact just because a few people that work at that company? It's a really nuanced line. Again, not black and white thinking here. You've got to make that decision. You've got to, commit to being willing to do something and then do that something. But Misty and a couple of other people said, you know what? I can't represent something that the CEO said, even though I love the people who work at that company, because I can't perpetuate that. And by supporting that company, I'm perpetuating that mentality.
Yeah. So our invitation to you, we're going to bring Vicki on in a minute. Our invitation to you is to really start looking at, in your life, where are you making a statement with your money?
Mm-hmm.
How are you spending your money? Where are you putting it?
Write down.
Into the companies. Look into like the top 10 or 15 companies that you purchase from on a regular basis. Are they the kinds of companies you want to be supporting? And what are the other alternatives?
You can even write down in a notebook, keep a notebook around and write down every single way that you interact with the system. When you consume something, when you watch something, do you support Netflix? What do they take a stand for? Do you support Hulu? What do they, just ask write them all down and then just do a little bit of research every single day, just a little bit every day, and start to decide, what are you willing to do about it? Maybe you're willing to do one thing, but not the other. And again, that's okay. There is literally no judgment, but we do have the power. And in order to change something, it requires a bit of sacrifice.
Yeah.
It requires a bit of sacrifice of your time, of convenience, and we get that. We're there with you, but we've got to do something. Because if we just go with the status quo, how are we going to fucking change anything, right? A revolution has to be inherently violent against the system. Revolution is not necessarily like just sitting in kumbaya. It's taking action. It's being proactive. That's the word. Proactive. Active. Proactive. Right?
Yeah.
Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
It's my Brazilian people. Forgive me.
I love how this is all of a sudden also now coming up like every other episode.
What, that I can't speak English? I never claimed perfection, okay? All right,
So we're going to bring Vicki on.
Yes.
We're going to talk about a little different nuanced aspect of this.
Vicki's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys are going to love her.
Seriously. So let's do this.
All right. All right, let us begin with the interview portion of today's podcast.
So our guest today is an absolutely phenomenal, radical.
Did you say phenomenal?
It's a combination of phenomenal and radical. It's a new word I just made up.
I like it. It's a good word.
She's unbelievable. You may have seen her in Inc. magazine. She's doing amazing things in the world. So Vicki Saunders is an entrepreneur, award-winning mentor, advisor to the next generation of changemakers, and leading advocate for entrepreneurship as a way of creating positive transformation in the world. She is the founder of SheEO, think about it, and Radical Generosity, a global initiative to radically transform how we support finance and celebrate female entrepreneurs. She's co-founded and run ventures in Europe, Toronto, Silicon Valley, and taken a company public on the Toronto Stock Exchange. She was recently named one of the 100 most influential leaders of 2015 from Empowering a Billion Women. And in 2001, she was selected as a global leader for tomorrow by the World Economic Forum.
Wow, amazing, Vicki. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show today.
Thanks for having me.
So we like to start our interviews by asking our guests. So we'll ask you, what does it look like for you, Vicki, to live an amplified life?
I love this question. This is such a great question. This is what we should teach at school. How do you live an amplified life, right? Like, really, like what? Nothing else matters, like math, calculus, what? This is something I've been thinking about my whole life. Like I don't think anyone really has a sense of what their potential is, and I'm like a huge human potential enthusiast. I have this on my Twitter, and people are like, "What does that mean?" I imagine, like, how can I make myself have a bigger impact? How can I create an environment around myself to have an impact, bigger impact every day? Ever since I've been a young kid, I've been wondering about that. And so I am constantly reflecting on what I'm doing, what's working for me, what's not, what comes easily to me, what's super hard for me. Do I need to keep doing the stuff that's like really hard that I'm not great at? Why am I doing that? Why don't I hand that off? What are the things that I'm amazing at that come effortlessly? That's my mastery in the world. And how can I do more of that? And so for me, an amplified life is being deeply and critically aware of what energizes me and what doesn't energize me, and then letting go of the stuff that's just really not serving me.
I feel like you're doing that absolutely brilliantly, and I want all the listeners to learn more about SheEO, because I know Bree is a participant, and we both advocate so deeply for this idea that you're the brainchild of, and I want everyone to know more about it.
Sure. So SheEO started a couple of years ago. I think it's a company that I've been avoiding starting for about a couple of decades.
Another really reluctant entrepreneur. Thais and I both say that we're reluctant entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard. It's tough, right? Mm-hmm. And then what we're trying to solve this problem, it started out as, how do we get more money into the hands of female innovators? Basically, 50% of the population has innovations that are sitting on the sidelines, not getting funded. Women are underfunded, undersupported, undercelebrated, period, in everything. And female entrepreneurs only get 4% of venture capital. It's been like that for decades. I feel like it's getting worse. How do we solve that problem? And so we came up with this model. I'm using like the royal we a lot here. So I came up with this thing. I came up with this idea of, basically leveraging crowdfunding, which is a new innovation over the last 5 or 6 years. It's come along. What if we created a low-ish price point for people to get started to support one another? So it's $1,000 from 1,000 women, create $1 million pool of capital, and then loan that money at very low percent interest, 0%, to female entrepreneurs who have great ideas that can grow and be replicated in different markets around the world. That are revenue generating. And the big thing for us is we want to support female entrepreneurs who are making a difference in the world. So they have a new model or a new mindset or a new solution for a better world is kind of how we frame it. So the idea is to take this model of women supporting women locally and then connect regions globally. So the goal is to be in 1,000 regions by 2020. Wow. So that would be 1 million women around the world supporting 10,000 female entrepreneurs. I mean, we have everything that we need to do this. There's like 7 billion people on the planet. And I don't think it's going to be that hard to find 1 million women to do this with each other.
Totally. Yeah. So I know you guys recently did this in the States, and there's a disconnect for women. They get really energized and emotional around the ideas, around talking about what's possible for these things. And then when it comes down to actually committing to invest $1,000, there's a disconnect. Something happens where their emotions aren't able to transfer into that taking action standpoint. And so I want you to talk a little bit about what that gap is, and as women, each of us listening, how we can start to bridge that gap more and more.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I thought there'd be a lineup. I literally thought we'd have a waiting list when we started doing this of women who wanted to support one another. I live in a little bit in the future, as I think some do as well. And, I know we're going to get there, but I was a little bit astonished, I have to say, about really where we are. Like, we live so much in scarcity, right? Like, oh, I'm not ready yet. I'd have to ask my husband if I could do this. What would I have to offer these ventures? Because it's not just about the capital, it's about your networks and your buying power and your expertise. And just literally a list of 20 different things that kind of stop people from being like, I'm too old to be part of this. I'm too young to be part of this. It's not the right stage of my career. I'm not ready to give back yet. Or I'm ready to give back, but this sounds really different. Like, so I'm giving money, but I don't get the money back myself, but it's being loaned to entrepreneurs, and then it's loaned to more entrepreneurs after. Like, what? How does that work? And so there's a lot of different pieces. And, my friend said to me, the thing that is so different about, you've done a complete reset. Like, if we were starting again, how would we do something completely different? And most people are kind of stuck in their head of like, you either give money away or you get money back, right? Like, it's very black or white. Mm-hmm. And we're sort of in this middle ground where you're contributing to someone else's success, and then that money is paying forward on an ongoing basis. And some people can't get their head around it. So it's been interesting, we call it radical generosity, because you have to sort of step into being generous, not expecting something back in return, but you get so much back in return. We know so much about the study of generosity these days that once you step out of your comfort zone and contribute, you start to realize you have more than you think you do. And it really does come back in this full cycle, but some people are just not there yet.
I think this is such a powerful conversation, and I would love to dive even more into the concept of generosity. I mean, we've come from a religious understanding of generosity from the concept of tithing, right? Of giving a portion of your income to the church. And I'm curious, why is that so accepted and kind of normalized? But then the idea of doing it in the business realm seems so uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think we live in, like, we have, one or the other pocket, right? I've had this ongoing dialogue with my friends who are investors and philanthropists. And so on the one hand, they'll give, $50K to a charity that they think is doing something good in the world and not really think about it. And then a for-profit company who's doing basically the same work, having similar impact, they will agonize over for 6 weeks about, how should I do this? And, are they going to pay it back? And what's going to happen with my money? And I'm like, most investors lose money, right? So I'm like, if you give away your money on the one hand, thinking traditionally philanthropically about what we're doing, you get a negative 100% return. So my friend says, right? So you're not getting your money back. It's not coming back. With SheEO, you're contributing your $1,000. It's being loaned out to someone who's going to use it to grow their business. They're paying it back over 5 years, and then the money's being loaned out again. So it's a 0% return, but the money's going to literally be in this perpetual cycle forever. And some people get stuck in this. So how does that work? And what happens? And who's, and they get into the details of it. I'm like, sometimes you just have to sort of jump off the cliff and try something new, because we have such a broken model in the world. If women don't start writing checks to other women, this is never going to change.
Yeah.
Men will not solve this problem. We've had the data. We have a great business case for this for the last couple of decades, not changing. We somehow have to get into the practice of writing checks to support each other. And I'm so old school saying writing checks, putting your credit card and swiping your credit card to support one another, and knowing that just being part of that community of giving and receiving will help you to be more successful once you start to realize you have enough. Yeah. It's a real mindset shift.
It is. It's so fascinating, because everyone looks at like the whole glass ceiling conversation, or, all of these things about women being where we are and not having achieved equality and all of these things. And we like to point fingers and say, well, it's the men.
It's the patriarchy.
Like the men are keeping us here, the patriarchy, the system, the blah, blah,
some
blah.
of that is true, and it is systematic, and it is.
It is. And we as women are doing it to one another as well. We are the ones, we have the power to make this change, and we're not taking it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of historical stuff in play here. There's a lot of stuff in our DNA around this. Like, there's been oppression for a long time, and to the point that it's like in our DNA and we start to believe it, right? We don't have what we need. There's a lot has changed, right? Women are making 85% of purchasing decisions. If we decided not to support male florists tomorrow, they would go under, like done, right? And so we sort of, not that I'm suggesting that, but like part of the thing that we need to like we have so much more power than we think we do, but you can't be lectured into changing your behavior.
Yeah.
You have to actually have an experience of it. So SheEO is designed as an experience for you to step into something where you don't really realize, like the women who contribute capital also select the businesses. And some are like, oh, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, yeah, you do. You do it every single day. You walk into a grocery store, you walk into a clothing store, you walk into wherever you're going, and you make a decision. That's investing. It's the same thing that we're talking about here. And so we are not activated. Like the number one thing I've learned over the last 18 months of being in like 500 living rooms is that we are not activated. It's not just our capital. We're not activated to support each other. We're not, like I walk into these rooms all the time and I'm like, how many people here would help someone if they asked you right now? Every single hand goes up. I'm like, how many people like asking for help? No hands go up. Right? It's this whole behavior that we need to start shifting. Like imagine if you were surrounded by radically generous women, how would you dream differently? How would you be able to amplify your life if you were surrounded by people who helped you?
Yeah.
So imagine if we started doing that with each other. We could literally change the world if we decided to start asking for help and helping each other.
It's so surprising too, Vicki, because we inherently have this nurturing aspect of our being where we will do anything to maintain peace, not from a negative standpoint, but from a very positive understanding of when we see our male counterparts, let's say our brothers fight, we're the first ones to be like, whoa, like let's chill out for a minute, let's breathe, let's take a look at this, right? We're the first one to take care of our children, to nurture, to cook, to clean. Again, not from the negative perspective of oppression, but from the positive perspective of we just naturally have this place within us that wants to take care of others. And so it's so interesting that we have that, and then the juxtaposition is, and yet we're not helping ourselves and each other.
Well, I think, we're not used to being the ones who are, making these philanthropic contributions or making these investments. It hasn't been us, right? And so there's the behavior shift there. We have to realize we have everything we need now. It's just, it hasn't come into the psyche yet. It's kind of like it's just something that we need to really work on. I would say in general, I'll talk about myself, and then you can decide if this makes sense for you, but very good at giving, not as good at receiving.
Yeah,
that's so common.
You need both. You need the whole cycle. It's like if you're always giving, you're out of breath. You're like, constantly giving. Whereas to receive is like the in-breath and the out-breath. So giving and receiving is really important to this whole process. And so I think this is something that we all really need to work on. I mean, clearly have picked something I thought was like slam dunk, super easy. I'm like, oh, okay. there's some other work to be done here. And so, at the end of the day, I was sitting there thinking, really, we're about getting capital into the hands of women who are innovators. But the other thing that we're really working on is how do we activate women? How do we create a safe space for women to be activated to support each other?
So what was, and I know you didn't get a chance to meet all of the activators, but if you're looking over the cross-section of women that said yes, like I met, your LA lead and instantaneously was like, who do I write my check out to?
Yeah, totally.
So what do you feel like is present in the women that are activators versus the women who just aren't kind of yet there?
Yeah. So, part of it is this feeling of not even really abundance, but that they have enough and that they can do this. And they understand that if I invest in myself, there's going to be this return that will happen within the network. You'll get connected with these other women. They are now your customers and suppliers and supporters. Like there's, but most people look at it from do I have $1,000 to give away? No, I don't have enough yet, and that's one issue. So what we noticed in our first couple of rounds is, as you say, like it was an instantaneous, like, oh my God, I love this. I have to do it. And if you go into your head and then you start asking yourself all these questions, well, do I have enough money? And what's the process here? And is this going to be successful? And what's the long-term strategy? And what's their sustainability? Like if you're asking yourself 20 questions, see you next time. That's my thing. We don't do any convincing. That's not what this is about. If you have, I call this, I speak a lot about energy and resonance. If this idea resonates with you, it hits you, and all of a sudden you're in. And so I'll give you an example. There was a woman in Canada who's an accountant, and she heard me speaking on the radio. Never met me. She heard me being interviewed, and she's like, oh my God, I couldn't get to my office fast enough to go and contribute money. And then she said, and then I woke up the next morning, I'm like, oh my God, what if this is a scam? Like, what if this isn't a real thing? I never do anything like this. I always research where I put money. I didn't do that. This hit me so strongly that I had to do it. And that's what the kind of spirit of it, like you literally go, oh my God. And you can feel this idea. You can realize that if 1 million women come together, we're literally going to crowdfund $1 billion a year to fund female entrepreneurs. You can feel it start. Like,
so
that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And then others are just like, it's scary. Well, how exactly does it work? Like, they go into their analytical brain and try and fit it into their existing thinking model. And they just get stuck in that.
Well, and something that just came up within me, Vicki, and I'm curious if you've ever got approached by this, is, well, seeing funding for men makes sense to build capital, to build their business. And my immediate tiny little thought that came up was, well, but is it a sign of weakness to admit that I want money invested in my business because I'm not working hard enough, I'm not making enough of an effort to do it without the support of my community? Have you ever received that type of feedback? Or is it just me?
Yeah,
it's almost like the sense of, is there any an energy of receiving money in this form, like me being one of the companies that receives a portion of the pool, as a form of weakness, as a form of, I should be able to do this on my own, as opposed to in the male counterpart, it's seen as, well, it makes sense that you need investors in order to make this into a much more profitable business.
Yeah. So I think like 85% of female entrepreneurs keep their businesses under $1 million in revenue because they psych themselves out about their, like, are you worth getting money?
Yeah. Are
you, is your idea good enough to be funded and scaled? Well, it's just easier to control it this way. Like, I understand, like, it's scary to step out. Like, I know I can like put my head down and just make it happen myself, but that's really hard to run a business that way. Oftentimes, right? It's really hard. And so bootstrapping along the way is something, but like, I find it very interesting that people call these like lifestyle businesses that you're just sort of doing. I'm like, no. A lifestyle business is when you have $10 million in revenue and you can actually have a life. Right? That's what a lifestyle business is. Like, this stuff you're doing right now, that has no lifestyle involved in it. It's like you're constantly on, and it's hell to run a business at that level. You want to get to that next level so you can actually breathe. And so again, though, like, we live in a business environment which feels very unforgiving, that doesn't let us thrive as female entrepreneurs for the way that we run businesses. We get to profitability quickly. We're really capital efficient. That's not really valued in the marketplace. And so, like, it's not a surprise to me that female entrepreneurs go and just kind of do things on their own as opposed to engaging in the system, because this system was not designed for us.
Yeah.
It was just not designed for us. And we need a system that's designed for us so that we can actually reach our potential. And so for me, I was like, if you're going to redo this thing, how would you redo it? And it's like, everything about what we're doing is designed with understanding the female entrepreneur's approach, and then leveraging that and saying that the way that you're running things is great. It's awesome. And let's design for that, as opposed to trying to turn you into a guy. So this is the other thing too. I really think this is where we can have the biggest impact.
Yes.
Right. It's like outside the system, creating new models and really funding each other and supporting that kind of innovation. Like, this is where I can't imagine having a bigger impact than getting money into the hands of incredible female leaders who have great ideas to create a new model.
I love it.
And it's so fascinating too, because I've been watching what's been going on with the whole Uber Lyft discussion, boycott Uber, delete Uber, like all this stuff. And I just read an article actually this morning that was talking about, like, yeah, absolutely delete Uber. And by supporting Lyft, you are putting money into a multi-billionaire who funnels his money to Trump because he is an investor in Lyft. And so I feel like that even goes to the next level of talking about the whole investing system that is as it is right now. These not, like, no offense, these men with interesting backgrounds and morals are putting money into these things versus, you know, this model is literally rooted in generosity, in love, in community, in all of these things. And like, it's just so fascinating to me. I feel like it even takes the discussion to a whole different level.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go the systems change route, I mean, Uber and Lyft are both sort of symptomatic of the winner takes all approach, right? Which is, so I mean, look at either of these, both of these businesses are bad for the economy long term. So from my perspective. So essentially we have companies, we're going to go to driverless cars. So at some point in the next 3 to 5 years, literally every single person who's driving is going to be out of a job.
Yeah.
And there will be a constant siphoning suction sound coming out of your wallet for the rest of your life, going into the hands of the 17 people who invested in those two companies forever, right? If they take over the public transportation system and that becomes the new way, which they're trying to do, you will be paying a fee to those initial investors forever. That does not create jobs. That does not strengthen local economies. Like that to me is like the antithesis of the kind of company we should be putting money into. And this is, we're sort of stuck in this world where, you know, we've put, I don't know, 30 or $40 billion into Uber, and it's not going to create any jobs. Yeah. It's doing quite the opposite. So,
well, and they're mistreating their current contractors by making them contractors. They completely absolve themselves of the risk of having employees by you know, having these drivers be contractors, which is not good for the drivers. They're
right. And so, but then we like use our marketing language and go, oh, this is such like amazing innovation. And it's like, actually, this is just continuing to like spread the divide even bigger. So when I started talking about SheEO 2 years ago at my speeches, I'd be like, there's 85 people on the planet that have the same wealth as 3.5 billion people. That's the result of a winner takes all model. And it's totally broken. Yeah. And then the second year I talked about it, it was 62 people. And this year, you know what the number is? Eight. Wow. There are 8 men in the world who have the same wealth as 3.5 billion people. Wow. So we are like, and those people, like they have all the capital, right? And all we're doing is creating a system where they get more and more of the capital. Each year, it's a smaller and smaller number. So we need a whole new economic model. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm playing at a bunch of different levels here, but one of our things is we have, if we started to aggregate our capital and use it differently to support one another and the kinds of business that we think make a difference, we can create a new world. But as long as we buy into this, like put all your money in a unicorn and get an insane return, we're stuck in a really broken world.
So ladies that are listening to this, and men, any of our men that are listening to this too, we love you equally.
Sort of equally.
Think about this. If you were to not take Uber or Lyft for an entire year, you'd save, I don't know, let's say roughly around $1,000. Right? Imagine taking that $1,000 and investing it in the model that Vicki's talking about. Imagine the impact that that has. There's statistics out there that by investing in women, the money actually goes further than if you invest in men because of how we run our households, our community, blah, 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 blah. So just as a call to action, if you feel inspired by this conversation, don't delete Uber. Actually, do delete Uber and delete Lyft as well. Save that $1,000. And when Vicki's doing her next round of funding for activators, I would love for you to join us.
Vicki, you know, I mean, studies are showing that if we infuse more money into women in a global economy, we would see a radical change in how this world is presented. So the last question I have for you, Vicki, is what is some words of advice to give to women who are not yet thinking big enough, who are not yet activated? What's a word of advice that you would give them to start stepping into that?
Yeah, I mean, so what's the biggest risk that you're going to face with this, right? Like you're going to stay the same. But my whole thing is imagine entering a community of radically generous women and how that would change you. How would you dream differently? How would you treat yourself differently if you thought that you would be surrounded by radically generous women who would say yes to you? To me, that's like the game-changing culture that will really free women to be all they can be. Right now, we're stuck in a place where we're pummeled all the time. It's like, oh, you're crying at work. I cry at work all the time, right? Like, that's not cool. So I have to be an entrepreneur. So like, a part of the thing, like, imagine it, like, no wonder we're not flying to the moon, most of us, because we're in a structure that wasn't designed for us.
Yeah.
Like, let's go create a culture and an approach that works for us. And I think it's going to work for a lot more people too. It's not just us. I know tons and tons of amazing guys who hate the system that we're into. It's just unforgiving. And we need to be in a place that has a bit more humanity. So for me, this is, if you imagine being like, how would you dream differently? Every single day, I think differently about my potential now that I know I have this network of people that I can ask for help.
That's
so
really
beautiful.
powerful.
This has been such a good conversation, Vicki.
I love it. I love it. So, Vicki, for people who want to know more about you and SheEO, where can they go?
So you can check out our website at www.SheEO, that's two E's, SheEO.world, SheEO.world.
I love it.
Awesome. And do you know when you are doing your next round of activators?
Yep. So we will be launching in early summer, and we're going US wide this time. So ventures, if you have at least $50,000 in revenue, you're majority female owned and female led, you can apply on our website. And if you would like to activate to support these ventures and to support yourself, you can also do that at SheEO.world. And we're on every sort of social channel there is too, so you can find us there as well.
I highly, highly, highly advise looking into this. Like I said, I became an activator the second I learned about the model. It is stuff like this that is going to make an impact in our world. It is women like Vicki that are making an impact in our world. So go check it out.
And we're going to wrap this up, but if you want to know even more about Vicki, including some very saucy details, dun dun dun, you can join our Facebook group. It's called Be Amplified, which you can join at www.beamplified.community. And we are going to be releasing a super secret, amazing, extra bonus episode of questioning, grilling Vicki until she starts sweating and crying. It's really good thing. So go join us there. Thank you so much, Vicki, for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And as always, you can find us on all the socials at The Amplify Co. And until next week, go be amplified.